Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Do I hear an acceptance of the minutes from the September 11th, 2024 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I hear a motion to move up the new business item of election of officers?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. May I please hear a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Philip Cordero.
Okay, those in favor, do I hear an aye?
Aye.
Motion is carried, thank you. May I please have a nomination for vice chair?
Nominate Kevin Wright.
Okay, those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried, thank you. Please have a nomination for the chair.
Nominate James Foote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion is
Aye.
carried. Thank you. Let's see, we got all petition, anything under that. We've got the communication reports, the monthly operating report summary for September 2024.
So any questions, just let me know. So month of September, flows were down a little bit. We only had one day. We were up pretty high, 7.7, average 3.0. BOD and suspended solids were both 98% removals, almost 99 on the suspended solids. Ethyl ammonia was 0.7 and 88% removal efficiency for nitrogen with 113 pounds average for the month. Phosphorus was 63 pounds on effluent. That's the rolling average. Effluent phos milligrams per liter was 2.55, and we averaged 21% on the cake solids and 2.3 on E. coli.
Anything out of the ordinary?
No, it was a good month. We didn't have much rain, which helps with some of the numbers, but we even into October were low. I think this morning, our flow from yesterday was 2.4, which is pretty low for us.
Yeah, I was a little surprised in 7.7 high.
Yeah, it was one of the days we had one of the rainstorms came in. So other than that, it was just right down after it.
Yeah, it was like second week of
It
September.
was literally like the
Wow.
second week, and that was it.
Mm.
Because usually people always ask like, what's our actual flow? And we typically average like 3 to 4 million, probably 3.3, 3.4. But I'd say our true flow here is probably closer to 2.4, 2.5. You just need a month or two of no rain to actually see it because there's no infiltration.
So, but that would basically make the case for INI, right?
Correct. Yep. So we look at areas, and we try to we do like epoxy coating in some of the wet wells or some of the manholes. We did it through the jug handle because we had I&I there. So we look at different areas.
So for this month, it literally more than doubled the flow.
There's if we get a bad storm, I mean, there are certain areas of the sewer in this town, especially up by Yukon on the side of 84. I mean, some of the manholes we're working on raising because some of them are almost at water level. So that's just coming in, right? So it's not unheard of to go from 5 or 6 million to 16, right? So there is I&I. We try to find the worst areas and then work on them. If it's epoxying, if it's raising the manholes, if it's sealing, whatever we can do.
It also could mean Avon or Florida.
I mean, yeah, it could. So Avon, I think I've seen 1.2, 1.3 come in through Avon in high flow events, which their low flow is probably 250. So even if there's a 50% increase and they're doing 300-400, almost a million of that is I&I. So it is an issue in this field, but you try to identify as much as you can because obviously it's not cost effective to just line the entire town, right? I think people would scream if they saw that bill.
In this case, if it was Avon's INI,
Yep.
in theory, they'd be paying for it in their
Correct, because then it would increase their flow.
increase their flow.
Yep. So for stations, Patrick Flood Pump Station, we wired a new high flow and a pressure transducer. We had a fog rod that was based on relays. The problem with the fog rod was it sits in the wet well. So when it gets coated with debris or grease, it would always throw it off. If you had a relay failure, it would also throw it off. So we replaced it with a float and then, I'm sorry, with the pressure transducer. And then we have a float as a third backup, which will run independently in case of a PLC failure. So there's a primary pressure transducer, secondary pressure transducer, the float, and then the float will also run on a high and a low in case the PLC failed. Yukon pump station, we had an alarm there for a fire. There's just a faulty sensor, so we replaced it. Batterson, we had a small fuel leak on the generator. It was actually coming from the O-ring and the gasket, so we ordered a new one, changed the oil, we were good. Harlan and Tungsten's pump stations, we're just working on planning for a roof replacement. They will make it through this year, but they're getting to the point where they're pretty old, so we may try to get it in before the winter.
Mark, backing up
Yep.
to that, the fuel we get better, so
Yep.
that, or what piece of equipment?
The generator. Yep. So that's diesel. Yep. And we do the oil, the filters, plugs, everything. But we had we just noticed like a small couple spots under it. So just change the gasket and the filter and we were good. Pump station upgrades and collection systems. We jetted Asbury Hollow, Stop and Shop Plaza, Summersby, and Wyndham Lane. Obviously there's more of those, but I just put in some of the major ones. We assisted highway in excavating and vacuuming the area around the water fountain at Unionville School. They had to work on some of the valves there, I guess. We provided risers highway to adjust elevation for several of the completed manholes. Plant maintenance and operations installed new whips on the vac truck, and a new panel for the rear door was also installed, along with new filter screens on the fan. And those are inside the truck. So I think the original ones were 5 or 6 years old. So it's just normal maintenance for it. The whips are just the front of the nozzle. So we average probably 2,500, 3,000 feet a day jetting. So they constantly basically just get pushed into the sewer lines or storm drains. So we replace them probably once or twice a year. Continue to inspect right-of-ways, Route 4 to Miss Porter's and the siphon right by the river on the corner here were both cleaned and cleared. Worked with highway using the sewer camera. We cambered a sewer line on Meadow Street for the Yale Museum. And we're also trying to find a lateral on, if you know where the goats are on Route 4, we're having trouble finding some septic records. So there's a sewer lateral bill, but we think it's still septic. They're not sure there. So we're trying to basically find through Farmington Valley, our town hall, and the actual, the worker there, where it actually is. I think the last one we had was from the 70s. Repairs and maintenance at the plant. We had to call Integrated Technology Solutions. We had a battery die. Some of these batteries are 60, 70 amps, so they're pretty big. It's not something that we stock. We had Hawk on site for the UVT sensor. This was, I think, the third time we had them out here. So they ended up taking the UVT sensor, we sent it out. They had to recalibrate, do a software update, and then they returned it the next week. So basically we were running in manual between the 3rd and 10th. On September 10th, we installed new brushes on the Muffin Monster. It's just part of the preventative maintenance.
You explain the Muffin Monster.
Yep. So it's literally, they call it Muffin Monster because it's just, they have a drawing on it. It's like a monster, but it just basically is a big grinder. You might have seen videos online where they throw like a motor in it, and it just completely shreds the entire motor up. So basically anything that comes in the plant goes through the screeners, goes on an auger up to the Muffin Monster, and it just shreds it, and then it goes through a cleaner. So it basically sprays it, cleans a little bit, and then you can throw it out in the dumpster. So any rags or anything that come in, wood, pieces of gravel, all goes through there. So the brushes on are on the auger, and basically every couple cycles, it just goes in like a back pulse and then continues. So without the brushes, it uses it as a guide. So we replace them proactively before they go. September 11th, we had a call from the police department that the manholes were surcharged. So we have caps on the manholes that keep the water for infiltration to go in. So if plumbers don't know this or people that don't work in the industry don't know this, they pop the manhole and it looks like it's full of water, but it's just the cap that's sitting on the top that has the water on it. So there's no issue. We kind of showed them, explained to them that we have a ton of them around town.
So why they think it was surcharging?
Because when they popped it, they couldn't see the lid, so they just saw dark, like brown water.
Why would they pop?
They were doing work at a house for a lateral,
Uh,
and then he went out to check the main line and was like, "Oh shit," to put it bluntly, and thought it was backed up for 4 manholes on the road. And I said, if it was backed up for 4 or 5 manholes, we would be getting calls all over the place. So that's usually what happens. Um, we had a fault for dewatering feed pump one. It ended up being a motor for the actuator. So Akia Neptune, who's a technicians for UMA, came on site on the 17th. We have a new motor ordered and we just swapped it. So this is for the dewatering. We have 3 pumps. We only need 2 at once. So we just swapped it for the time being and we're waiting for the new motor. We also had a failed transducer in the filtrate wet well. We've been replacing a bunch of these KPSIs. They're a couple years old, but typically they don't go at that rate. We started laying blocks for the influent grit chamber wall, and after this, I'll show you some videos of it. It will help with the influent splashing out during high flow events. And this was completed on the 25th.
On that topic alone, I'm always amazed at the extent that you go to keep the maintenance in-house. And I never thought that the operators here would be in any position to be laying blocks.
Not professional, it's not perfect, but it
Right.
came out pretty good. I
I'm
mean,
gonna say I was
the
impressed.
final picture, I mean, came out nice. We put caps on it and everything. So it worked out very well. So what ended up happening here was, and this was from 2018, and we were kind of going back and forth with what we wanted to do because it's a rare occurrence. But this area here was all closed up with these aluminum grates. So when we went over, now remember the plant design is technically 18.97 max, right? Anything over 16 on the original elevation of this, before we put this wall here, it would literally bubble up on the bottom here and just fly over the side of the wall, right? Now, everything goes into a sewer that goes back into the plant, so it's in the plant, right? But you still don't want it coming out, obviously. So for a while, we were like, well, can't we just bolt the grates down? And then they started coming up on this side because you have one channel here at this grit chamber and one channel here at this grit chamber. So even as much as you bolted, it was coming out. So we ended up kind of debating between doing a block wall, doing a big pour, and we ended up just doing a block wall. It's all filled in. We put the caps on it, and now when it comes up, the water can relieve the pressure here, but not go off the side. So we're basically keeping it in house.
Are you gonna do any kind of an epoxy or something?
So we did the sealant we put on it was an epoxy type.
Mhm.
So I mean it should be good other than a tornado coming through. So this was it before. Let's see if it'll load quick enough. Some of the guys are yelling in here, but so it's a little blurry, but
You tested it?
this was what
Oh, before.
this was what used to happen, right? So this is about 10 million. It doesn't look like horrible, but you can see it starting to splash out. If I fast forward a little bit, this is the influent. So this is when you went for the tour, right? And you go up on top of the grit chamber, that's pumping all the way from this building all the way over there. But you can see at 18, 20 million, what starts happening. And it looks like splashes, but I assure you that's a lot of water, right? That's coming out. So that was our original issue. And then after this, when we put it on, we tested it a couple of times to see how many like rows up we wanted to go because originally we started with 2. So this is what it typically looks like off. This is just maybe 1 million gallons a day. And then once we turn the pumps on, you can see it start building up. And we went all the way up to 22 million, which is about our max. Sorry, it's sideways, but it's contained in there. So without this, this would have all been going over and onto the grass. So probably a spec issue from the start, but it was a lot cheaper than going out to fix it. So
They got a swimming pool.
you could try to swim in there if you want.
Who needs that splash pad?
We got one right here. Reduced rates. So that's about it. And then let me just see. Yeah, that was it for the month. Like I said, we were under the nitrate by 65 pounds, 64.5. And we're doing training this month on trailers and chainsaw training. Any questions on anything?
I said that. Kudos to your staff here because, I mean,
No, they did a good job.
just on not only that, but I mean, all of these things are very highly unusual and not a common occurrence, and for somebody to be able to fix anything is pretty impressive.
Well, even the Muffin Monster, I have to give them credit because I think we had pictures of when we did the water and when you pull the auger out of the screw press, it's like the size of this room. Even some of those projects, I mean, we have it down to probably an 8 to 12. It's an overtime day, an 8 to 12 hour fix or repair. But I think the quote from Huber was 27,000 per press. So even with 6 guys here on a 4 hour overtime, it's not even close to what it would cost. So it's a good crew. They do a good job. So I'm happy.
Yeah, it's like some good talent there.
But that's it. Any questions or?
So when we get the plan upgrades, cover that.
Yeah, the only thing left is just the lateral report. So just the plans and approvals, which Meadow Road connection was paid and South Road was repair of an existing lateral.
So what's going on in Meadow Road?
I have to check on that. I'll get back to you, Jim.
That's a,
I got this one at the last minute today, so.
pictures. Hey, unfinished business,
Yes,
unfinished business,
nothing.
any other business? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved, do I hear a second?
Second.
You've been second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion.
Aye.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Sarah. Have a good night.
You too.
You too. Have a good night.